She only wanted to survive the night. Callie Monroe was alone, pregnant, and freezing beneath a bridge in Ashridge when a stranger knelt beside her. That man was Dr. Mason Rhys, a millionaire obstetrician on his way home, who ended up delivering her baby with his bare hands on the frozen pavement. What began as an act of compassion would unravel a powerful legal battle, a public scandal, and a love story no one saw coming. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. The night was brutally cold, the kind that gnawed through layers and settled deep into the bones. Traffic in downtown Ashridge was frozen in a sluggish crawl. Headlights blurred across rain-slick streets like smeared constellations. Beneath the dark expanse of the Eastwood Overpass, the air thickened, hushed, broken only by the occasional car horn or the low hum of engines simmering in impatience. Dr. Mason Rhys sat behind the wheel of his sleek black SUV, breath clouding the windshield as he waited for a break in the gridlock. The city lay imprisoned in ice, and the snow falling now had lost all charm. It was jagged and merciless, a reminder that winter still held its iron grip. He had just left a prestigious medical forum uptown where he'd been honored as a guest speaker, praised for his pioneering techniques, his calm authority, and his reputation as one of the nation's youngest and most accomplished obstetricians. But in this moment, none of it mattered. He just wanted to get home. His phone buzzed again, a congratulatory message, likely from a colleague. He didn't check it. Instead, restless, he drummed his fingers against the leather wheel. Then something at the edge of his vision made him pause. There, under the dim light cast by the overpass, lay what looked like a heap of discarded blankets, barely visible near the guardrail. He nearly dismissed it until it shifted. Instinct took over. Mason threw the SUV into park, yanked on his coat, and stepped out into the biting night. The cold slammed into his chest, stealing his breath, but he kept going. As he drew closer, the outline became horrifyingly clear, a young woman curled inward, clutching her belly. She was trembling violently, her face ghost-pale beneath a worn hoodie that hung too loose on her frame. She couldn't have been older than her late 20s. Miss Mason crouched beside her, voice calm but urgent. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, wild, unfocused, filled with pain and fear. Her lips moved, but the words cracked with effort. I can't. It hurts." Her voice was raspy, tight with agony. Please don't let my baby die like this." "Not cold." Her breath was shallow and ragged. "Are you in labor?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Are you alone?" She gave a faint nod. A tear traced down her cheek. "There's no one, just me." Mason's pulse surged. He pulled out his phone and called 911 with one hand while using the other to check her vitals. "This is Dr. Mason Rhys. I have a woman in active labor under the Eastwood Overpass near 9th Street. She's hypothermic and showing signs of distress. We need an ambulance now. ETA 15 minutes. Came the dispatcher's voice. Too long. Far too long. The woman, Callie, began to groan low and deep, the kind of sound that meant the baby was coming. "What's your name?" Mason asked, kneeling fully now and sliding his coat over her shoulders. "Callie," she whispered, voice cracking. "Callie, listen to me." His voice dropped, firm but gentle. "You're going to be okay. Your baby is going to be okay. But we can't wait. You have to deliver here." Her eyes widened in panic. "No, I can't." "You can," he said firmly, holding her gaze. "I'm a doctor. I've done this 100 times. I know what I'm doing. Just trust me." Another contraction tore through her. She clutched his arm with surprising force, teeth clenched. Mason helped ease her onto his coat, carefully placing his scarf beneath her head. The pavement beneath her was merciless, but they had no other choice. He ran to his trunk, retrieved a compact medical kit he always carried, and tugged on sterile gloves. "You're fully dilated, Callie. You need to push hard," she screamed, the sound bouncing against the concrete. "That's it. You're doing amazing." Time bent around them. The world shrank to just the two of them. A battle against the cold, the dark, the fear. Mason's voice was a constant anchor, steady through each push. Then, at last, a cry cut through the night. Mason lifted a tiny, slick newborn in his hands. A girl. Pink, breathing, alive. He exhaled with disbelief and relief all at once. He bundled the baby inside his shirt beneath the coat and gently laid her against Callie's chest. "She's perfect," he whispered. "You did it." Callie let out a shuddering breath, arms trembling as she pulled her daughter close. The wail of sirens began to swell, but Mason barely registered them. His world had narrowed to the tiny life curled against Callie's chest and the woman who had just brought her into it. Under the flickering yellow street lamp and the howl of approaching wheels, something profound shifted inside him. Moments later, the ambulance skidded to a halt on the icy road. Paramedics rushed out in a blur of purposeful movement. Mason gently brushed snow from Callie's tangled hair as they transferred her onto a stretcher with practiced care. He climbed in beside her, refusing to release her hand. Her skin was like ice, her lips pale, breath shallow. "She's hemorrhaging," he told the EMT in clipped tones. "She needs warm fluids, oxygen, and constant vitals." The technician nodded, already moving. Mason adjusted the oxygen mask over Callie's face and gently pressed her fingers. Her eyelids fluttered weakly. "Don't leave her," she murmured, barely audible. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, leaning in. "You're safe now. Both of you." The ambulance raced through the frozen streets of Ashridge, sirens echoing off high-rise walls. Inside, Mason's focus narrowed to two fragile patients, one breathing steadily, one clinging to life. At Clearwater General Hospital, recognition lit across the emergency staff's faces as Mason stepped out of the ambulance, still holding Callie's hand. They didn't need introductions. Everyone knew Dr. Mason Rhys. The nurses parted for him as Callie was wheeled straight into trauma care. He turned, handed the infant to a neonatal nurse with steady precision. "Born outdoors in sub-zero temps. Hypothermia risk. Keep her under a warmer. Monitor vitals and O2 Saturday." "Yes, Dr. Rhys," the nurse replied, taking the infant gently. Mason didn't sit. He paced between Callie's room and the neonatal unit, reviewing vitals, consulting the staff, making sure nothing was missed. His button-down shirt was soaked through from snow and stress, his usually crisp look replaced by urgency. No one dared tell him to rest. There was something unshakably personal about how he hovered over both patients, like this wasn't just medicine anymore. 2 hours passed. The transfusion stabilized Callie's blood pressure and fluids brought color back to her cheeks. When Mason returned to her room, she was propped up slightly against a pillow, her gaze far off, but alert. She turned her head slowly when she saw him. Her eyes, though tired, had the same fierce endurance he'd seen under that overpass. "You stayed," she rasped. "I said I would," he replied softly, sitting beside her. His voice, stripped of clinical sharpness, was just human. There was silence. Heavy but not uncomfortable. "Thank you," she whispered, eyes on her hands. "But I'll leave as soon as I can walk." He frowned. "Leave? This place, the lights, the quiet, it's too good," she said. "It doesn't belong to people like me." "Callie, you gave birth on frozen concrete," he said gently. "You nearly died. I've lived through worse." He studied her more closely now, the dark circles, the emotional bruises. The weight she carried wasn't just physical. "Where would you go?" She hesitated. "Back under the 5th Street Bridge, maybe the West Park. Depends what's dry." "You'd raise a newborn like that?" Mason asked, incredulous. Callie squared her shoulders. "I've been alone since I was 17. I know how to survive." "You shouldn't have to anymore," he said, softer now. She didn't reply. Her eyes flicked to the baby bag near the door, already packed, already ready. The next morning, Mason returned with a plain paper bag. Inside, fresh clothes, socks, mini toiletries, and a pack of newborn diapers. When Callie saw him, she crossed her arms. "I told you I'm not staying." "And I told you," Mason replied, setting the bag down gently, "you're not going back to the street." She glared. "Why do you even care?" "Because nobody else does. And because you're not just anyone. You're the woman who screamed her daughter into life in a storm and held her like she was everything." Her jaw clenched, but her eyes wavered. "I have a place," he said. "Behind my house, there's an old greenhouse. It's dry, quiet. No one goes there. You can stay, just until you find your feet." She blinked fast. "Why would you do that?" "It's not charity. It's room to breathe, to just exist." Callie's voice wavered. "And if I say no?" Mason met her gaze evenly. "Then I'll still worry every night about that baby sleeping cold on concrete." He paused. "But it's your call." Callie stared at him for a long beat, then slowly nodded. biting her lip to keep it from trembling. "Just until I figure things out." "Deal," Mason said, his smile gentle. Later that day, she sat in the passenger seat of his car, baby Lena wrapped tight against her chest. As they drove, clouds parted and sunlight spilled across the dashboard. For the first time in years, Callie let herself feel warm, not just from the heater, but from his quiet presence beside her. The greenhouse was more than she expected. Heated, dry, filled with hanging ivy and a faint smell of citrus and soil. She kept it cleaner than any space she'd known, sweeping each morning, folding baby clothes with almost sacred care. Mason had even left her some seedlings to tend. She took it seriously. It gave her purpose. But it wasn't the plants that stirred something inside her. It was the work she started doing 3 days a week at the Ashridge Women's Wellness Center where Mason volunteered. One quiet afternoon, she asked, hesitant, "Would it be crazy if I helped out?" "I mean, at the clinic." Mason blinked in surprise, then nodded slowly. "You want to work?" "I want to matter," she said, her voice small. "I don't have degrees or fancy training, but I can clean, organize, talk to people. I know what it's like to sit with pain." His smile came without hesitation. "That's more than enough." So she came early, stayed late, checked in waiting mothers, warmed tea for nervous ones, offered tissues and quiet encouragement. People saw her, really saw her, and it terrified her. But she stayed. Then, one gray afternoon as Mason finished paperwork in his office, his phone buzzed. "She's burning up," Callie cried on the line. "Lena's got a fever. I don't know what to do." "I'm coming," Mason said instantly, grabbing his coat. When he arrived, Callie met him barefoot at the greenhouse door, hair wild, panic in her eyes. Lena was flushed and whimpering, her tiny body hot with fever. Mason took over at once, measured her temperature, listened to her breathing, felt her pulse. "It's a high-grade fever, but no rash. Her lungs sound clear. Could be viral." He crushed a fever-reducing tablet, mixed it into juice, and spooned it gently to the baby. Then he soaked towels in lukewarm water and began to cool her down, inch by careful inch. Though his hands were expert, each motion was tender. Not just clinical, loving. Callie watched from the corner, arms wrapped around herself. She didn't speak. He sat on the floor, Lena dozing in his arms, whispering to soothe her. When her cries faded, Callie whispered, "You didn't have to stay." He looked up, eyes soft. "I didn't want to leave." The truth tumbled out of her in pieces like glass shaken from an old box. "I was 19 when I met Gavin. He made me think he was my future. When I got pregnant, he said I'd ruined his life. His parents paid me to disappear." Her voice broke. "I had nowhere. Slept on buses. In shelters. Sometimes just on the ground." She looked down at Lena, nestled against her chest. "I honestly thought, maybe it's better if we both didn't make it." Mason said nothing, but his jaw tensed and his knuckles whitened. Not with judgment, but rage at the world that had failed her. "But you made it," he said eventually. "And you kept her alive with nothing but your strength." Callie wiped at her face, fingers trembling. "Sometimes I don't even know how I'm still here." He rose, laid Lena gently in her crib, and turned to face her fully. "You're here because you fought like hell. That's more than survival, Callie. That's grace." And in his eyes, she didn't see pity. She saw something fierce and real. She saw belief. It started with a knock. Sharp, deliberate, heavy. Callie froze mid-rock. Lena nestled against her shoulder in the greenhouse. The scent of lavender and fresh soil lingered in the air. Snowflakes danced outside the frosted glass. A rare calm had settled, until that voice shattered it. "Callie? You in there?" Her spine went rigid. She crept to the window and peered through the misty pane. Her breath hitched. 3 figures stood at the edge of the garden. One, tall and sharply dressed, wore that same smug grin that haunted her nightmares. Gavin. His coat was tailored wool, his hair slicked back just like always. He didn't look like a man chasing redemption, he looked like a man here to claim. Beside him stood 2 others, an older man in a charcoal overcoat and a woman with pinched lips and a bag that could have paid Callie's rent for years. His parents. Her stomach turned. Callie instinctively moved in front of Lena's crib, shielding it with her body. Then she stepped outside, pulling her coat tight, breath sharp in the air. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Gavin gave a lazy grin. "Long time, Cal?" His mother's gaze swept across the garden with thinly veiled disgust. "So this is where you've hidden? A greenhouse behind someone else's house. Charming." Callie stiffened. "What do you want?" Gavin stepped forward casually, hands still in his pockets. "We're here for Lena." The words hit like a blow. "What?" "She's my daughter," he said, tone even. "And my family agrees she deserves better than this. This life isn't good enough for her." "You walked out before she was born," Callie snapped. "She's not some souvenir you left behind." Gavin tilted his head, his smirk never fading. Gavin's father stepped forward, voice smooth and practiced. "You're not married. No income. No legal residence. You've been homeless. This arrangement is unfit for a child." He pulled a paper from his coat. "We've already filed a petition for custody." Callie staggered back. "You can't. You left us." "You were offered money," Gavin said flatly. "You offered me hush money to vanish," she hissed. "And yet," his mother interjected, "you seduced a doctor into caring for your mistake." "Clever." Callie's face went pale. "You don't know anything about us." The woman sneered. "I know our granddaughter carries our name, our blood. She will not grow up raised by some gutter girl playing house in a potting shed." Gavin stepped in closer, voice low. "We have lawyers, Callie. If you make this difficult, we'll fight dirty. You have nothing. We have everything." Her heart thundered. She could hear Lena stirring behind the glass. "I won't let you take her," she whispered. "You won't have a choice," Gavin said. "The courts will eat you alive." Callie's vision swam. She slammed the greenhouse door, locked it, and dropped to the floor, clutching Lena tight. That night, she didn't sleep. The weight of years spent on benches, in shelters on the run, crashed down on her. Now, when life was just beginning to feel safe, it was being ripped away. By dawn, her decision was made. She packed the barest essentials, diapers, formula, one extra outfit. She wrapped Lena in a blanket and pulled her into the sling across her chest. At sunrise, she slipped out the back gate. No plan. Just instinct. She would run, like before. And this time, no one would find her, not Gavin, not his money, not the courts. She would disappear again. Even if it killed her. She didn't make it far. Just a block from the alley, a voice pierced the early fog. "Callie." She spun. "Mason." He stood breathless, in dark scrubs, hair tousled, his coat hastily thrown over his shoulders. His SUV was parked awkwardly at the curb, hazard lights blinking. His eyes scanned her, duffel bag, Lena pressed tight to her chest, tear-streaked cheeks. "Where are you going?" "I have to," she said hoarsely. "They're going to take her. I won't let them." "Callie," he took a step forward, "you think running will protect her?" "You don't understand," she snapped. "They have everything, lawyers, money, connections. They'll drown me before I even get a court date." "You're not alone," he said, softer now. "You gave me Lena the night she was born and trusted me to keep her safe. I'm not walking away from that." Her breath caught. Tears streamed down her face. "I can't do this again. I can't be alone out there." "You're not," Mason said gently. He stepped closer and touched the strap of Lena's sling. "You're not alone anymore." Callie looked at him, stunned, as rain began to fall. The sky grayed and the wind picked up, biting at their faces. But she didn't move. For the first time, she felt the ache of wanting to believe him. At a dim corner bus stop, she huddled against the glass, shielding Lena from the cold. Her clothes were soaked. Her fingers numb. Lena whimpered against her chest, and Callie rocked her gently, whispering, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm trying." Headlights cut through the storm. Mason's SUV pulled up once again, this time slowly, deliberately. He stepped out, rain pelting his shoulders. "Callie," he said breathlessly. "Please. You can't stop this," she whispered. "They'll take her." "You don't have to fight them alone," he said. She shook her head. "I don't have a lawyer. Or money. I'm nobody. What court would ever choose me?" He took off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, then cupped her face in both hands. "You don't need to run anymore," he said, his voice thick with something deeper than reassurance. She bit her lip. "I'm not strong enough for this." "Then let me be strong for you." He took a breath, and then said it. "Marry me." She blinked. "What?" "Legally. If you're my wife, Lena's my legal stepdaughter. No judge will give her to them over me." Callie stared at him, stunned. "Mason, this isn't about pity," he said. "It's about protection. About giving her a shield neither of us has on our own." She hesitated, her heart pounding. "You'd really do that?" "I would," he said quietly. "Right now, if you'll let me." She looked down at Lena, sleeping against her chest. Then she looked back at Mason, the man who had delivered her baby in a storm, the man who had never let go. "Okay," she whispered. He nodded once. No grand gesture, just a vow he'd already committed to. An hour later, they stood in the dim glow of the Ashridge Municipal Courthouse Annex, damp clothes clinging to them, Lena cradled in Callie's arms. The clerk blinked at them in confusion. "We need a marriage license," Mason said. "Tonight." They signed papers with trembling hands. The justice of the peace said a few quiet words. When asked to speak vows, Mason turned to her and said simply, "I will protect you. Always." Callie barely managed to speak, but her voice cracked as she replied, "And I won't run anymore." There were no rings, no bouquet, no music, just the hum of fluorescent lights, the shuffle of wet shoes, and the soft breath of Lena asleep in Callie's arms. But when they stepped back out into the quiet night, something felt different. Callie Rhys? The name sounded strange, but it was hers now. And so was the man standing beside her, no longer a stranger, no longer her doctor. Now, legally and finally, her family. Later that week, Callie picked Lena up from Little Lantern's Academy, the small daycare Mason had helped her find. They walked hand in hand down the block, Lena bundled in her pink jacket, humming softly. Callie smiled as she listened to her daughter's voice, soaking in a simple peace. Then she felt it, that sudden tension in the air. Her instincts flared. A black SUV screeched to a halt across the street. The doors flung open. Gavin's mother stepped out first, her heels clicking sharply, face twisted with rage. Behind her came two broad-shouldered men in dark coats. Then Gavin, forced smile plastered on his face, but his eyes wild. Callie's blood turned cold. "Not here. Please, not now. June!" Gavin's mother shrieked across the street. "You thought you could steal our granddaughter and parade her like a trophy?" Lena clung tighter to Callie's hand. "Stay behind me," Callie whispered. She turned, pulling her daughter close, but Gavin's men crossed fast. One grabbed her by the arm. She screamed, "Let go!" The second reached for Lena, who began to cry, arms flailing. "No!" Callie shouted, holding her child tighter. "You have no right. You left us." But Gavin's voice rose above the chaos. "She's ours. She has Rhys now, but she's still mine." Then, the screech of tires. Another SUV tore around the corner and skidded to a stop. "Mason." He moved without hesitation, fury in every step. In one clean motion, he punched Gavin across the face. Gavin hit the pavement hard. The man holding Callie let go, startled. Mason stood between them, chest heaving, fists still clenched. "You touch them again," he growled, voice low and deadly, "and I'll make sure you don't walk away next time." "You assaulted him." Gavin's mother shrieked. "You tried to kidnap my daughter in broad daylight." Mason roared back. "And you put your hands on my wife." Then sirens. Red and blue lights burst onto the scene. Two patrol cars skidded to a stop. Officers jumped out, shouting orders. Callie clutched Lena, still shaking. An officer gently pulled her aside. "Ma'am, are you hurt? Is your child okay?" Callie could barely nod. "They tried to take her. They grabbed me." Another officer cuffed Gavin as he groaned on the sidewalk. His parents screamed about lawyers, rights, reputations. But it didn't matter anymore, because for once justice arrived on time. All four of them were arrested on the spot. Charges: attempted kidnapping, assault, harassment. Mason gave his statement clearly, his fury simmering under his steady tone. Callie was taken to Clearwater General for bruises. Lena was checked and found unharmed physically. But emotionally, both were rattled. Still, Callie held her tighter that night, whispering over and over, "You're safe now. You're safe." That night, the story exploded. A bystander's video had captured everything. Gavin's mother screaming slurs, the scuffle, the punch, the police arriving. The footage went viral. Headlines blazed. Millionaire doctor stops public kidnapping of wife and child. Ashridge hero Dr. Mason Rhys defends family in broad daylight attack. Social media poured out in support. #Justice for Callie. #Heart of Rhys. Donations flooded into the Haven House Foundation, the nonprofit Mason and Callie had quietly started weeks before to support struggling mothers. Callie's past wasn't ammunition anymore. It was proof of what she'd overcome. And Mason? He wasn't just a skilled physician or a public figure. He was the man who stood between her and the storm and chose to stay. In the garden behind the Ashridge Women's Wellness Center, the wildflowers were in bloom. A white wooden arch stood beneath the soft spring sun. Paper lanterns swayed gently in the breeze. Laughter echoed in the courtyard. It had been a year since that rainy night when Mason had asked her to marry him, not for love, but for protection. Today it was love. Only love. Callie stood behind a gauzy curtain wearing a modest lace dress. Tiny white jasmine blossoms were pinned in her hair. Her hands trembled just slightly as she adjusted her hemline, but her eyes sparkled with something unshakable. Outside, the folding chairs filled nurses, shelter residents, women who had found strength through Haven House. The old greenhouse had been transformed into a library and lounge for women and children. It smelled of citrus, safety, and second chances. Beside the arch, Mason adjusted his cufflinks nervously, smiling at the little flower girl darting between rows. Lena. She wore a puffy pink dress and white sneakers, her curls bouncing as she skipped. Lena, honey, no running just yet, Mason chuckled. She turned mid-skip and flung herself into his arms. But I missed you. He kissed her forehead. You'll see me in a minute when we walk mommy down the aisle. Okay, but I still get to throw the flowers, right? She asked. Every single one, he grinned. Soft strings filled the garden and old violin played by one of the clinic's patients. Lena marched forward, tossing petals with intense focus. And then Callie stepped into view. All fell silent. Mason's breath caught. She moved slowly, with purpose, like someone finally stepping into a life she once only dreamed of. When she reached him, he extended his hand. She took it without hesitation. The officiant began to speak, but Callie barely heard the words. All she felt was Lena's tiny fingers on one side, and Mason's steady grip on the other. Would you like to share your vows? The officiant asked. Callie nodded. Her voice shook, but it rang clear. Mason, you didn't marry me for love, but you loved me in every way that mattered. You gave me and Lena a chance, a roof, a voice. You gave me back myself. You taught me that broken doesn't mean unworthy. That surviving is powerful. Tears shimmered in her eyes. From one lost soul to another, thank you for never letting go. Mason's throat tightened. He took her hands and smiled softly. Callie, I thought strength was about control, precision, success. But you showed me that real strength is vulnerability. Choosing love when the world only gave you reasons to fear it. You taught me that family isn't who you're born to, it's who you stay for. And I'll stay. Every single day. The officiant smiled. I now pronounce you husband and wife again, but this time for real. Cheers rang out through the courtyard. Lena clapped wildly from her seat, then jumped up to twirl in a rain of flower petals. Mason leaned forward and kissed Callie with a tenderness that spoke of everything words couldn't say. Later, as twilight settled over the lawn, guests danced among lanterns and laughter. Callie stood near the greenhouse, watching Lena chase fireflies with a group of other children. Mason came up behind her, wrapped his arms gently around her waist. Tired yet, Mrs. Rhys? She leaned into him, smiling. Not even close. He kissed the top of her head. They both looked across the garden at the women Callie had mentored, the babies cooing in arms, the bookshelf inside the old greenhouse now filled with hope. Her voice caught in her throat. One unexpected question changed everything. Mason turned her toward him. And one brave answer gave us a life. They stood in the soft glow of string lights, stars slowly emerging above. Lena laughed somewhere in the distance, her joy echoing like a melody. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better because it was real. A story of resilience, of healing, of choosing family again and again. The homeless girl in the millionaire's heart had become more than a title. It became a truth. That no past is too broken to rewrite. No soul too lost to find its way home. From a bitter night under an overpass to a garden blooming with second chances. Callie, Mason, and little Lena had proved one simple truth. Family isn't made by blood. It's built by love.